right now?
Go for it.
Fuck, alright. I was like, so I played EverQuest a little while back,
No, I've
and one
never
of
played EverQuest.
EverQuest is a From Software game for the PS2. If you didn't know, very good. From Software on the PS2 had some of the best library in existence. They were some of the most technically impressive studio out there. EverQuest is just another example of that right after Eternal Ring. They did such a good job with EverQuest that I would still go back to that today, even after just beating it not that long ago, and be like, yeah, I would play that again for the sheer enjoyment. It's a slow but also kind of fast action RPG that shows off everything they wanted to do with the original Dark Souls. Do some research while I think about that, and maybe you'll come to like look at some video, maybe talk about it a little bit. Maybe you'll be like, yeah, I like this, I don't like that, just from your first impressions as an outsider. Tell me, what do
Already
you
a
think?
lot. I mean, of course I pulled it up immediately, but this is a lot of like early, I would say like early Dungeons and Dragons heavily influenced stylizations. I think the
Sort
argument
of.
that EverQuest is, eh, I don't even know if it's a fair argument to put EverQuest against Ocarina of Time because it's
I
so
think it is.
completely different.
Okay, I think it is, and let me explain why that is. When you jump into EverQuest, it's just like Ocarina of Time. You're given very little. It's a very unique story to itself. You're just waking up for the first time in the middle of this world you've never seen before, and you're given a couple of menial tasks to do, and then it moves on into this kingdom-saving adventure that really becomes something that you
Oh, it
become
was
a part of.
THQ, by the way.
I It was From Software, published by THQ. Er,
Konami.
what am I thinking of?
It was Imagineers, THQ, Konami. You're talking about Quest 64, right?
Hold on. Hold on.
'Cause
I can find the name of
EverQuest
it.
was the MMO. EverQuest
Hold
is
on.
an
I can find the
MMO.
name of it. Give me a second. From Software games on PS2 is easy to find.
Are you talking about Eternal Ring?
No.
'Cause the Eternal Ring was kind of a joke.
No, I'm not talking about Eternal Ring. There's something else specifically that I'm
Yeah,
thinking of.
Age Tech. Everybody.
Evergrace.
Evergrace. Okay, there we go.
Evergrace. What a fucking good game. I couldn't even remember the name, but the gameplay itself had me so enthralled. Why would I? It's such a good game. Honestly, it's like the fixed camera survival horror slash action RPG I never knew I wanted, aside from Devil May Cry, and it probably does a better job than Devil May Cry ever could of being a good action RPG for the PlayStation 2.
It's still so funny to me.
I'm sorry, I'm not the best with names.
I'm like, EverQuest, the MMO is better than Zelda? What? I'm like,
No,
on N64, I'm like, this
okay,
this this
I
motherfucker had a
have to correct
DD.
you. I have to correct you. Better than Zelda is not what I said. Very on par with the
Oh, well,
idea
yeah.
is what I said.
Well, we, okay. Zelda, Ocarina of Time, okay. Fun. Fun to play with. The mechanics are fun.
Evergrace, Evergrace, literally more fun. It's not quite the Z targeting battle per battle action RPG situation you get into. Like you would have gotten into with Super Nintendo RPGs like Secret of Mana, or maybe even
You say
A Link to the
mana?
Past if you didn't know how to play it. Yeah, Secret of Mana is a good reference back to Evergrace. That's probably the best comparison I can draw.
Oh, I've always said mana.
Oh, mana.
Yeah, like, let the mana rain down to.
Mana though, Sumamana. You know not Japanese? Like
But
you and I both
I'm an
study
American living in
Japanese.
a Catholic
I
area
understand that.
headed
I
by
understand
Jewish
that.
culture.
I understand that. Learn a little bit more phonics. It's mana. The A is a long A in the middle. There is a legitimate
Well,
pronunciation to it, and I love you,
it's just
but my
funny.
bad.
We're also on opposite sides of a continent.
Fair enough. That
So,
does make a huge difference.
absolutely massive difference.
Totally regardless, back on the subject of gameplay, Evergrace does something for me that I don't think any RPG has ever been able to do. It makes me concisely think about every single movement I make. Something that they brought into Dark Souls, kind of, but was relayed by the parry mechanic, whereas Evergrace, every single walk, step, action you make is an absolutely 100% important moment. Anything you do could totally turn the tide of the battle for you.
I think we're gonna have to play this on our show.
I will. I will 100% play through Evergrace again. This is such a good game. If you've never played it, you're a From Software fan. You
I
absolutely
am
have to.
not a From
We will
Software
live
game
stream
fan.
this. You like Dark Souls
That does not make me a
and
From Software
Bloodborne,
fan. I am willing
and you're
to
waiting for
argue.
Elden Ring. It's one of the couple
Ninja
of games on
Blade,
your wish list.
Ninja Blade, you're gonna sit here and defend them? They have so many stinkers in their
Well,
lineup. There are so many stinkers in
look
From
at those.
Software's.
My definitive From Software game is probably Sekiro.
And you want to know something else? Age Tech helped with Evergrace. Age Tech is a failed company, but they also did a good job. But the projects that they did work on were good. You're completely ignoring the fact that a completely different studio worked on Evergrace. And it's probably one of the main reasons why it did good.
They
Because up
published
to
it.
this point.
Listen. They published it.
But do you know the importance of a publisher? You know the importance?
Of a publisher, but think back to Modern Warfare 1. How many times did Infinity Ward literally push Activision out of the studio in order to make
Activision is one of the worst
happen?
publishers in the world because they take away funding to make more money.
I know that, but Infinity Ward is objectively one of the best game development companies on the planet.
As long as you recognize that
even though I personally don't like Souls-like games, I still believe Evergrace is one of those From Software moments where they showed off the real skill, raw technique, general design talent, and pure mechanical
exactly what I was getting
to make a game.
To. You need to also understand that Age Tech is a company who everything they released was pretty good. Like if you go through the Age Tech, yeah, exactly. Everything they do is pretty damn good. Platinum Games, everything that they release is pretty damn good. There's not a lot of stinkers in their library, but From Software on their own, they got some stinkers, homie. They got some big stinkers.
But that's the same as Atlas, though, right? The same people responsible for Shin Megami, Dual Hearts, and so many other amazing RPGs. Capcom,
Bungie,
responsible for so many amazing things. Bandai Namco,
Oni from Bungie, bad. Destiny 2 from Bungie has a lot of issues. Stinkers.
That does not and will not ever deter me from the fact that From Software managed to make an absolutely incredible game out of Evergrace, and not only Evergrace, but Eternal Ring. If you've never played that,
but like when you're looking at a company who's been around since, oh my god,
this was the
98 From Software.
Yeah, just like
or 2000.
Atlas has. Something that might pique your interest a little bit more. Evergrace was kind of like their first step into the Souls-like genre. If there was a Souls-like, it's an Evergrace-like in reality. That's what makes this so important to me. Evergrace introduced mechanics that were first introduced
I don't give a shit. That's the thing. Like, people are always looking for the original Souls. Like, I don't give a shit. Like,
I'm not looking quite for the original Souls-like. I recognize Evergrace for being what it is. Like Resident Evil 4, it's not about being the definitive Resident Evil game.
It's not. It's definitely not.
The definitive action RPG in this instance for Evergrace, just like being the definitive tension survival action horror game is definitive for Resident Evil 8. Evergrace is definitive action RPG. I do not like the Z targeting in The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. That's one of those things that bugs the hell out of me. The visuals are amazing for the time. The gameplay is amazing. The mechanics they managed to pull off were amazing. It's the Z targeting and battles in general
You're walking away from
Where
your
something
mic.
like where something like Evergrace manages to catch my attention again is the entire freedom of the game is you being able to swing your sword in whatever direction you see fit to disable the enemy at the time. You, the player, and that's what defines video games for me.
Okay,
You, the
may
player,
I?
are entirely responsible for whatever goes on, and it's amazing.
So all I was gonna say was it's really important to recognize that Evergrace is 2000. Ocarina of Time is
Doesn't
98.
matter.
Hang on, let me finish what I have to say. You keep cutting me off. You're so rude. um, the difference is only important in the regards that there are probably a lot of things that were taken away from Ocarina of Time to inspire Evergrace, and that is important.
That's true.
That is true.
That's true. The
Um,
beginning, when you wake up and you don't know what's going on, that's clearly a shot taken from the Ocarina of Time, but I don't think that's necessarily taken from
okay,
video
hang on.
games.
I didn't even finish what I was saying.
I know.
This
I
entire
just
conversation began with the conversation of why is Ocarina regarded as such an amazing game? And you and I are in agreement that it's really not as good as the internet makes it out to be. Correct?
okay. Okay.
I'm pretty
I
sure
agree with that.
like your memory of Evergrace and how definitive it is to you is
Actually,
extremely important.
get
But
this.
how are
I
you going to
only
feel?
played it. I only played it earlier this year.
What?
Evergrace. For the first time, I only played it earlier this year.
Oh, that's fine.
After I played Resident Evil 8.
I've beaten Ocarina of Time probably 100 plus times. Like
That's incredible. I've only beaten it like 4 or 5 times.
it's I mean that's what I had as a kid. There were no other games. Like Perfect
Fair
Dark
enough.
was pretty bad. 007 is somehow remembered fondly. It's pretty bad. Go back and play it.
First person shooters on Nintendo 64 is a whole other topic we got to talk about.
Well, what I'm trying to say is a lot of these people who were born in 93, 92, 91, who remember, Ocarina of Time so fondly is because up until that point there weren't really any super hardcore common, games like that. I mean, you had some Final Fantasy stuff, you had Dragon Quest stuff, but there was nothing really like Zelda in the mainstream. I'm sure there were games like that. So when it came out and the people who did experience them, it was so visceral and different. Super Mario 64, Legend of Zelda, they were so important to that generation because
So,
my uncle didn't understand how to play it. He had never played a 3D game. He hated it because it was 3D. I loved it because I was young enough to learn it. It
on
was
the
so decisive and divisive.
I really don't mean to interrupt you again, but on the totally opposite end of the spectrum, I don't think Evergrace is quite like Ocarina of Time at all. I think Evergrace is its own unique action
Oh,
RPG
that's
that's a
fine.
lot
Yeah.
more Secret of Mana inspired. And I brought this up a minute ago. The Secret of Mana is one of my favorite games. Secret of Evermore is really good too. I think Evergrace is a lot more inspired by those than it is by Ocarina of Time.
Oh, of
And I
course.
say that because games like Diablo 2, Nox, Dark Cloud, Summoner, Rune, Record of Lotus War, Eternal Ring, all of those were inspired by Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
Evergrace is its own natural action RPG, and that's what sets it so far apart from the rest of every other action RPG I played. I get very passionate about video games, you know that.
I swear to
And
God, if I play it and I disagree with you, I'm going to be pissed.
one of those things I get the most passionate about is a video game that really makes me think about my actions as a player.
I swear to
You
God,
know
if I
me.
play it and it's just Fantasy Star, I'm going to get so mad.
It's not. It's not, and I guarantee that. I'll play through it with you. Matter of fact, we'll do that soon if you're willing.
After I beat Control.
It's a very, very good game. It's one of those games I almost can't believe you've never experienced because
I probably have.
as a person, you as a person will take so much away from Evergrace just in the moment rather than you would have taking it away when it first came out. As a game now, it means so much to video games and how they develop that it almost feels like every video game developer played it and no video game critic during my entire lifetime ever managed to talk about it. I never heard about it. It took me until I was 21 years old to figure out that this game existed.
Um,
And I'm a video game historian. I make a point to keep up with things.
it only sold
It's incredible.
75,000 copies. That's why it was
Yeah,
limited release.
it's very small. It's like Earthbound. It's one of those so small but so beautiful stories that you honestly, as a gamer, as you are, cannot go without experiencing at least once. It's so good.
It's
I
so
cannot
interesting
express
that
my
you have
love.
so much passion for this because like the overwhelming consensus is it's mediocre.
I have so much love for this game as a whole. Just for what it does, what it did differently from other games, the things that are so unique. This is the kind of game you, as a mechanical draft artist, would write.
You think so?
I think so. I think Evergrace is the game for you. And not only that, I think you'll have a better time with it than you ever could have expected going into it.
I
Set your
won't know until I play
expectations
it.
low. Be
Oh, I
anybody
am.
else, you know?
I
But
always walk into a game with my expectations low. You know that.
but
I walked
but I
into Halo
believe
expecting it to be absolute trash.
I
Like,
believe in the game enough to say that it is one of my favorite games of all time, sitting now after 2021 in my top 10.
in your top 10?
In my top 10.
I mean, okay.
It's
I'm
so
gonna
good.
stick to our our whole
My
conversation here.
my top 3 go To the Moon, Hotel Dusk Room 215, and then probably Evergrace if I had to lay it down. It's that good. I feel like it is the definitive action RPG.
I don't know.
You
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
set your expectations lower, but I feel like it is the definitive thought-based strategy action RPG.
Oh, I'm setting my expectations low, just looking at the general consensus, but I'm not gonna say you're wrong. I wouldn't know. And you
You
have
know me,
every
I
right
love
to
my niche
appreciate.
game,
Yeah,
but
you have every right to love something. Anyways, tons of
yeah,
people love shit games.
maybe you won't like it as much as I will. I can't guarantee you'll like it as much as I will or even fucking care about it when you're done with it.
Well, it'll
But I
also
can
be interesting
guarantee
to see what the audience thinks. Like, because people are
yeah.
gonna see this and they're gonna play it themselves, and they might come back and be like, "No, you're wrong. This game is bad for these reasons." It'll be interesting to see how other people respond to this
Yeah.
video.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's exactly what I want to hear because the things I like about it may be things that other people don't like for specific reasons.
there's a lot of
And
things
it's
people
subjective
don't like.
opinion.
Yeah,
So that should be the lesson to take away from this podcast. I've done one every three that we've done so far. The lesson to take away from this podcast is that opinion is very subjective.
oh,
There are
absolutely.
many things we disagree on.
Oh yeah. That's something that people probably should know about this podcast is you and I do not see eye to eye at all.
Yeah, and that's what makes our friendship so beautiful, right? Is because despite that, we respect that and we're
Absolutely.
willing to see the other person's side.
Yeah,
I'm willing to play Silent Hill 3 knowing that it is a game you enjoy and it's good for the technical reasons you describe.
which we haven't talked about yet, so let's not get into that.
Yeah, we'll save that for another day too. Foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing. What I was gonna say I had Ocarina of Time. I had played it a lot, and then I got the disc with Master Quest on it. I had that growing up. I still have it to this day. And when I talk about Ocarina of Time, I'm always talking about Master Quest and my time with Master Quest because that is a game that deserves a lot of recognition. Master Quest did what the original Ocarina of Time
It
should
took
have done.
it took the original dungeons, gave them the time and love and care that they deserved, and gave Ocarina of Time a totally different meaning.
Yeah.
It was a really good game. I would rather you play Ocarina of Time Master Quest as a guy who doesn't care for The Legend of Zelda aside from The Link to the Past at all, as a guy who really does not give a shit about early Nintendo aside from the Magnavox Odyssey. I have to tell you, very good game. Master Quest is one of those must play games that is up there with every genuinely passionate gamer's
I
arsenal.
agree. It like there is like this level in my eyes when I talk to people in arcades and things like that, because I go to gaming conventions and I do this for a living, and I bring up Master Quest, and if people are like, "Oh, what's that?" I'm just like, "How do you? What do you mean?"
Not no.
Yeah,
Yeah, what do you mean?
what do you mean? Like you didn't have a GameCube, you didn't have a Wii
But
U, you didn't have
something to
a
remember
Wii.
about Master Quest and the way that that was released ultimately is that that was not a game that was released to literally everybody.
No, it wasn't. It was a
And
quiet launch. It was a
and
very quiet.
most of us like me, unfortunately, who couldn't be around when the GameCube was offering that promotion, played it through ROM hacks who eventually translated it to the N64. It was
GameCube.
literally the way to play it. The GameCube ultimately I feel like would be a better hardware solution and it would run them better, but I can't deny like Master Quest felt so special to me, not only because of what it was, but because of how I played it ultimately.
The
Like
big the
Agartha.
big thing was Agartha, that's a good or Luna. Um
Yeah.
or so many games. The thing about Master Quest is, especially if you are a Zelda fan, and if you have no idea what I'm talking about, you need to go play Master Quest, and you need to go play Majora's Master Quest because you're not enjoying Zelda the way it was intended to be played, and
Oh
that
yeah.
that is 100% a fact. Like they have said that they made the original games baby mode because they were going to release the harder modes for adults, and then they didn't,
Disk
and
drive,
then it took them
baby.
forever to do it.
You remember the Nintendo 64 disk drive? Totally off topic, but a good
Yes, I
thing to
do.
talk about on podcasts. The Nintendo 64 disk drive, despite its mediocre release and what it was still a very impressive piece of technology
Did it release? Oh, I thought it only released
in Japan.
Japan. Okay.
Yeah, but despite that, it's still released. We can't only think of ourselves in North America
No, of
and
course not.
South America.
No, of course not. That would go against everything I believe. You know that.
Yeah, the disk drive was so incredibly important in the idea that some things got released, but the things like Ura Zelda and Zelda Master Quest that never got released are going to go on forever remembered as those things that were and could have been, and Master Quest gets to live on that reality. It's what sets it apart from Ura Zelda, which was supposed to be Zelda 64 originally. It's
Yes.
that thing that solidifies it as a piece of video game history, as something entirely its own, a version of Ocarina of Time, officially by Nintendo, totally different than its original counterpart. It's so special to those of us that did get to play it.
I, I can't.
Even as me, somebody who didn't like Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, but you like Master Quest.
I love Master Quest. It's so beautiful. It's
No,
amazing.
but with that stated, when I say Ocarina of Time, does it change your perspective now that you know I'm talking about Master Quest?
No, no. Because ultimately, the thing that killed Ocarina of Time's mechanics for me were the lack of use of them in its most prominent areas, the dungeons. And they fixed that with Master Quest. It
Okay.
is literally the defining fix factor for
So
Ocarina of Time. It is the only way to play the game.
if somebody came to you and they're like, "Oh, I want to play Zelda," would you recommend them Master Quest immediately? Would you be like completely ignore the official release
No,
and play Master Quest?
no, I would be like, play uh Hyrule, play the 3DS game that was two different Hyrules, A Link to
A Link to the
whatever,
Past,
A Link Between
A
Worlds.
Link Between Worlds is incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be the one I would recommend you play Zelda first because it's the closest to the original Zelda it can get, and the closest to Ocarina of Time Master Quest it can get without being so old that it's off-putting to the entire market. Like I feel like A Link Between Worlds is something you could market to literally everybody
Okay, hang
if you
on.
tried hard enough.
Because this is kind of a question that I feel like I don't bring up enough. Do you feel like the Master Quest mechanics have aged poorly?
No.
No.
I
Okay.
feel like the
I
Z
think
targeting mechanic aged poorly, but I feel like Master Quest and its dungeon mechanics aged tremendously. We still have never seen anything like it.
which we should say to the chat that Z targeting is one of the things Red and I disagree with on pretty often.
You like Z targeting, you like the idea of being able to hook on, and I don't.
I don't
I think Kingdom
always.
Hearts targeting was the better idea.
I don't always like it.
See, a game like Kingdom Hearts took the Z targeting mechanic and turned it into something you didn't have to toggle. It was just always there. It was something you could rely on as a useful game mechanic that told you not only where you were defeating an enemy, but also where you were in the stage in relation to the enemy. It helped develop perspective and
Yes.
perception, and it developed
Well,
things that were far beyond. And we have Z targeting to thank for that.
I was gonna
We have
say,
Kingdom
like,
Hearts to thank for making it viable.
I was gonna say, because I mean, else would you play Zelda? I mean, you didn't
It was
have
literally
grounds.
Z-axis targeting.
Yeah,
You
but
couldn't not have it. It was the aim button, it was the Z-axis button, it was literally everything you used
yeah,
to center everything to the 3D space. It is the Z-axis button.
that's what I was about to
And
say. It was like hyper important just for you to even be able to play the
yeah,
game.
yeah, but that doesn't negate the fact that it wasn't quite as comfortable as
Oh
some
no, it
things
wasn't.
later on became.
No,
I would
of
argue
course not.
Star Fox Adventures is a better Zelda game than most Zeldas that came out before Master Quest.
And this is what comes down to our conversation from the beginning of the episode. This is full circle. So, what actually started this conversation was the mechanic of Z targeting in The Legend of Zelda. You like to live in the moment. I like to live in the moment, and other people do not. The Metacritic of Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time has not changed since 1999, when it was considered a 100 out of 100 masterpiece. You and I both agree it is not deserving of that title.
You and I, as psychologists, also both recognize something the general public doesn't: the idea that cult metabolism follows everybody.
Yeah,
If one person likes it,
metabolism. I know
many
what
are
you meant.
bound to follow.
You said metabolism.
I mean, that's really what it is.
I
It's
mean,
cult
kinda.
mentality fueled by followers, which would be the same as energy fueled by activity. Cult metabolism.
It makes sense. I didn't say it didn't make sense. It just sounded funny. It really is too, though. Like, there are just so many games out there that it's been 22 years as of today. You know what I mean? Well, 24 years for The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of
20,
Time.
40 something years for the Magnavox Odyssey now.
Yeah, going on like 40 plus years for Magnavox Odyssey,
I'm
but
a video game historian. I haven't said that to the viewers yet. Love my history.
um I just don't think like nobody is going to be born in 2010 and is going to wake up one morning in 2022, 12 years old, load up their N64 and play
I
Ocarina of Time and say it is definitely the best game ever made. It's not going to
I
happen.
disagree. I disagree. I think some players, because of their opinions and how subjective people are, will wake up one day and realize, regardless of what age they are, like I did when I realized the Atari 2600 at 15 years old was an amazing console.
Oof.
I think that some people someday, like me, will realize that there are some better things out there. That the consoles that set amazing
Yeah,
standards
but what I'm
are
saying is
still
the
amazing
best.
today because we have never seen them before, which immediately makes them the best.
Mm.
That's just it.
I just
If
don't
we've
know
never
if I
seen it,
could
then it doesn't
believe.
exist. But I can. And that's just it.
I mean,
You
that's
and me, the
fair. That's
difference.
fair.
I host the Copper Cube Discord. I believe in indie developers.
Of
I
course.
believe everybody is capable of everything, and impossibility is the only impossible factor in reality. It is the biggest paradox in possibility.
I just can't see it, is what I'm saying. Within my own mental fortitude and state, I cannot see it. I cannot see a 12-year-old who has access to an iPad and thousands of video games that are modern and
And then
with so much advertising of what should be liked by them forced down their
and then
throat by Epic
and then
Games
I
and
see
Activision.
Zoomers. And then I see Zoomers like Derek and myself who've grown up with really good video games their whole life and still choose something like the original Quake or Dusk or retro games over something that was released right here and right now because simply the mechanics are more comfortable.
But to say it's the best game ever,
But that's still subjective. There is no best game or worst game aside from that which we think for ourselves.
because I'm not
Your
saying they
favorite
will like it. I'm
is what
not
it is.
saying they'll like it. I mean, people will like it. Of course, people will like it. I'm saying somebody will stand before me at the age of 12 and tell me Ocarina of Time for the N64 is the best game they've ever played. It'll always be the best game ever.
Whereas you, somebody who believes Ocarina of Time is a very good game, who
Of course.
changed gaming, stood before me at 18 years old and realized that Ocarina of Time might not be the best game ever made.
Me?
Yeah, because whether or not you like to think so, Control is your favorite game. You
Control
love the
it.
elements
Okay.
Zelda introduced, but Control became your favorite game because you're a fan of the story, the implements, the mechanics, the things that technologically increase the capacity for video games. And I knew that. I
Uh,
knew that you
Pause.
weren't always the guy to love Zelda right when it counted. You had something else in there. There were games that showed greater mechanics.
Of
Zelda
course.
has good mechanics that bred other things
Of
that,
course.
whether we like to admit it or not,
Well, I'm an
became
objective
great
person.
mechanics.
I'm a very
You're
objective person.
subjective.
No, I like things that from an objective perspective.
You do. But
Like
you also have very
Control.
opinionated things.
Oh, we all
Silent
do.
Hill
Yeah.
3. I
Silent Hill
looked at
3 is
Silent Hill 3
trash.
from a totally objective perspective. I was like, Silent Hill 3 is a not good game with a very good story. And you were like, I love the story of Silent Hill 3 because it fits
Yeah,
in well. And I was like, no, that we disagree. And you accepted it. And
of
that's what I'm
course.
trying to get at.
Yeah. Which is why
We
I'm
all are
excited.
subjective beings.
It's why I'm excited to play EverQuest because it's very clear to me that or Evergrace that this game is extremely important to you. You're very passionate about it, which
It's
when
very
you're
important to me.
it's when something like that comes up and it's extremely passionate like
And
this,
it's
it's fun. It's I get to view things through your lens and how you get to
it's
see
not
things, and
just
it's fun.
it's not just rose tinted glasses nostalgia important
Well,
because I
it's
didn't
not
play it
nostalgic
when
to
I was
you.
a kid.
Yeah. This is
Yeah,
clearly something
I
recent. You
just
said that.
played this.
Yeah.
It was incredible to me even now as a video game. I can't think of anything else I've ever played that's like it.
It's the same thing for me. Like when people are like, "What game should I play?" and I say Control, it's not just because the game itself is special. There is just so much love and passion behind that game. You can see it in everything: the world
All right.
detail, the mechanics, the destruction. Everything is
Oh
just
my god, it's
so
so good.
good. The
It's so
lighting,
good.
the writing, the voice acting, the interpretation. Like
And
Control is very special.
let that be the lesson of this episode. Everything is subjective. Games are special to you because they are special to you. Where I might like an objectively not good game, like Shadow the Hedgehog, Ian might like an objectively not good game, like,
Silent Hill 3.
well, yeah,
Silent Hill 3 is not a good game. That is just
yeah.
a fact, but I love it anyways.
And that's the fact. We all subjectively decide what we do and do not like, and that is how video games operate. We, as
Fortnite.
an art form, create things that we love.
Fortnite.
Fortnite is the prime example.
Fortnite is one of the most divisive games of our generation right now. You either hate it or you love it. Nobody just plays Fortnite.
Yeah,
Apex.
you yeah,
Another one.
any battle royale that involves tons of people together in the same space. Anything that gets people together is divisive, and even people who hate it still play it because they know deep down there's something they appreciate. And that's it. We all appreciate something about the games we play, whether we love them or we hate them. I could play Big Rigs and appreciate that not every game turned out to be that.
Big rigs over the road racing.
Exactly.
Absolute fucking dumpster fire.
Really, honestly. And I can still appreciate that not every game turned out to be that.
Thank God. I bring this up quite often. I'm not a multiplayer guy. I don't like PvP. I don't like the the anxiety and the everything that comes with multiplayer games. And then I recently found out, oh, well, this is all brought on by my autism. Multiplayer games don't work for me because I'm autistic. Other people who have that competitive spirit, it works for them. It gets their blood pumping, and that they make it makes them feel something
So what
good.
if so what if you just behaved like them for a second? Maybe you'd find the same appreciation for this thing that they do
Oh yeah,
that you didn't have before. And
and
that's what I like to find.
I
When I
did.
walked into Silent Hill 3, I walked into it with the appreciation for the cult-like story that you had, and regardless of whether I walked out, I still appreciate that. They
Oh my
closed
god.
Harry Mason's story. It was a thing that Team Silent made the active decision to do.
Yes.
And I cannot respect that more.
Yeah, because you don't need to play Silent Hill 3. If you like Silent Hill, you don't have to play Silent Hill 3. You could just play 1, 2, 3, or 4. They're an anthology.
Any
They
of them.
all close their own stories by
Yeah.
their ending, which is
And they're
incredible.
beautiful all in their own right, which is what, despite my misgivings about Silent Hill 3, makes it such a beautiful game in its own right.
And
I
that
will never be able to fault Team Silent for something that they just threw everything they had into.
you're also a slitterhead, so
Slitterhead, you're a slitterhead, you
you're a
fucking dog
slitterhead.
Chad Slitterhead.
I'm excited for Slitterhead.
Me
Um,
too. Looks good.
I want to just real quick finish my thought on the multiplayer before I lose it. I played a lot of Halo 3 and I played a lot of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 1 and 2, and I was able to get over that anxiety back when I was younger, and I found a really deep appreciation for the the competitive state of
Yes.
multiplayer gaming. And I do to this day, like I'll hop on Halo Infinite with you from time to time.
Yeah. So if I can interject real life for a moment, that's kind of why I've wanted to become a boxer lately. The sense of real pugilism, person versus person, fair fight play that occurs is what makes me want to do it. I
Yeah,
recognize that I have the equal opportunity to stand up from that thing that beat me down, and not only can I do it, I can do it and emerge victorious. And that's exactly the kind of feeling video games aim to provide, and that's what I've always loved about them.
um, that's one of the things that I like about speedrunning so much is that
Yeah,
constant combative kind of competitive nature that
yeah.
is based on your
And it's
skill.
not even competitive with other people. When you start speedrunning, you become competitive with yourself.
Yeah.
At that point, you're solely trying to best yourself and how good you are.
I have plans on doing a Halo Infinite run, and I don't know the speedrun strats. I'm not gonna watch any of it. I'm just going to go ahead and
Send
do a
it.
run. I'm not even gonna look at what the speeds are. I just want to know where I stand with my own brain capacity and looking at the mechanics of
Fucking,
this game.
yeah. Fucking send it.
That's right.
Send it as hard as you can, and you'll emerge one of those people who absolutely redefines video game mechanics for people because you recognize things perceptively others might not.
Yeah, because
That's what keeps our video games getting better.
if I don't record myself doing it without looking at other people's runs, I can show off strats that I've created during my last 3 playthroughs.
Yeah, that legendary run was super dude. You looked like you spent a lot of time getting to know the environment, getting to know the game you were playing, getting to know the enemies around you, getting to make sure you knew everything about the game, and that was awesome.
Like I did skips at the end and there were people saying they didn't even know those skips existed.
And it still managed to be one of those things that you were just there to do. You weren't even intending to find those skips, they just happened. And it happened to be a good thing because
Yep.
you're a good speedrunner, you're good at identifying mechanics. This is the reason I play games on their hardest difficulty the first time through.
Because you want to understand those mechanics and learn how to
Right
use them
away. Yeah,
right out of the gate.
right away.
Because then when you make your move and you go to something like hard mode or normal mode just to play through it, it doesn't feel like a grind anymore. You know exactly
I'm a
what you're doing.
developer. Yeah, I'm a developer. I don't want to enjoy the gameplay and learn about it as I go. I just want to know that I can hop in knowing what I know as a game dev and be like, yeah, I know how this works. Let's fucking go. I'm ready. And when I do learn things, I stop and I get to pause and I get to be like, wow, that is so insightful. I never would have thought of that.
And then me being a mechanical draft specialist, I like playing on hard difficulty first because I get to see how mechanics play out, and I get to learn how you can utilize different tools to make those mechanics easier or more fun
That
for the
is
player.
that is the big difference between us. You like to learn how they play out first. I like to learn how they play out in the moment when I am in the most danger and I have to use them.
It's also a sense of what we do, though. You are a developer. I am a drafter. We do two completely different
But
things.
one thing we share in common is I write the mechanics that you design.
Yes. Yeah.
That's just it. I write the mechanics that you design so that we can come to terms on a singular middle of the road area. And when
Almost
that
like that's
comes to
how it should
terms,
be.
yeah. And when we come to terms, it becomes a beautiful piece of art that should have existed a long time
It's
ago.
it's almost like if Team Silent had done that for Silent Hill 3, it would have been a better game.
It's almost like, and I know you don't agree with me totally, but it's almost like the medium.
Oh, yeah. No,
They
no.
got an idea. They knew what they wanted to do. They made it happen.
The difference between you and me when it comes to the medium, and we will be doing a segregated episode on this when I revisit the game, is I respect the medium for what it is. I just think the whole game was fucking boring.
And I think I could totally change that around with a couple of tiny variables.
All it needed was stuff to do.
It had stuff to do.
I know
Because it
we've
wasn't
had this
combat.
argument.
It
Yeah,
wasn't listen, because it's psychologically there wasn't combat, there wasn't stuff to do.
the
There
puzzles were
was
easy
stuff
for
to
me.
do.
The puzzles were
Yeah.
extremely easy for me. Like,
Yeah, but you also walked into it. I remember going through it with you. My second time through, your first time through, I went through it with you.
yeah,
And I remember you having the exact same reactions to the puzzles as Silent Hill Downpour. It
yes,
wasn't that you weren't prepared for it, it was that you walked into it immediately thinking the puzzles were just going to be another puzzle and you wouldn't have to adapt them to the actual circumstance that was going on.
yeah.
It changes the mindset whether we think so or not. I
Oh,
think a good
100%.
second playthrough of the medium, slow, steady, to the pace, playing games like I do for a moment. Because I play plenty of games like you do. Playing games like I do for a moment and doing the medium to do that would be the game that reaffirmed your sense of okay, mechanics can sometimes be fast and sometimes be slow. And sometimes mechanics don't even need to be any speed. They can just be. They can just exist and they're still good the way they are.
Yeah. I do agree with that, and a lot of that actually has influenced my writing into like Cradle and things like that
I
because
love Cradle as an idea. I've been working on some designs I'll show you here soon. It's, that is under NDA. Don't reveal that information. It's a secret. I've been working on some stuff for Cradle for a while, and I can't wait to show that off to you.
it's under NDA. It's my game. I wrote it.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm trying to be a good cryptic developer and let you open yourself up to ARGs.
um
Be a good director.
all I was going to say was there are moments through the medium where things occur naturally. They feel natural. Um and that has inspired a lot of my writing in Cradle and how the environment can influence your decision making
How the
throughout the
medium
story.
handles itself is incredibly impressive, and I think that's a method of Bloober Team.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
They
They know how to
with
pace.
Layers of Fear, Blair Witch is a generic story that they somehow managed to turn into a really good horror game somehow.
I
Despite the
mean,
misgivings about the graphics and the way it turned out looking, the
how it
mechanics
played.
they employed, and the coding that goes into it as a developer, I have nothing but respect for.
I will say this Bluebird team, you know when it's a Bluebird team game right
Oh
out of the
yeah.
gate. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they were identifiable. The
Oh, yeah.
medium was no different. And you know what? I felt like the medium was the most Bloober Team thing Bloober Team has ever done.
I agree. I agree.
And I can't wait to see more.
I can.
I can't. I want to
I
see more. I want to know what the hell psychics are and why the Soviet Union is so interested in them. There's so many things. That's a whole other episode.
yeah,
Storytelling
that's
is a whole other
that's a
episode.
whole nother like layering sub stories, and that's what I've been hired to do recently is
Oh
write
yeah.
side stories.
And I kind of want to wait a little bit until you've had a little bit more time. So that way it can be like, okay, your time spent learning how to write, what have you learned? And you'll be able to answer me
Oh, a
accurately.
lot. I've learned a lot already. Just like
Oh
basic
yeah.
notes, like you know how when you play like Cyberpunk or something and you find a note in the street and then it tells you something and you're
But
like, "Oh, that's what this is about," and you figure it out.
that's exactly why I want to give it time.
Oh,
I'm not like everybody else. I can learn a lot and remember it. I know you've learned a lot, but I want to see how much you remember after the every end of everything is done.
well, what's also important is I'm a drafter.
Yeah,
I'm
you
not the
do the
final
pre-concept
writer.
draft
Yeah,
writing that and I don't care about your grammar. I care about the substance of your idea, and that really is
exactly.
what makes the difference.
That's
Cradle is such a beautiful idea.
that's what I want other people to understand is like a drafter is not somebody who's writing the final
Hey,
product. I write the
hey,
initial concept.
I really hate to do this to you, but I have to pee like a fucking sieve,
No,
and I'm
you're
gonna leave
good.
the end of the podcast to you.
That's perfectly fine. I wanted to close it up anyway. So, thank you guys so much for watching Monster Mecha Podcast. I appreciate it. We have such a fun time having these conversations about mechanical designs, and sometimes we just have to stop and record ourselves when we get really passionate about something. If you do end up playing Evergrace, let me know down below. Let us know down below. We don't really have any links to anything else, but we are kind of sort of brought to you by Humble Bundle today. So check out Humble Bundle, but the link down below. Get yourself some games. It helps out charity, and it'll also get you some games. It's for PC people, and it all supports the show. Thank you so much for everything, and thank you for making this podcast possible. Goodbye. Red says bye in text form.